We're back on the other channel, and today we're going to build ourselves a little 7-liter Hemi again. Now, I know it's kind of unrecognizable in its current state, but old girl here, it's the engine that came out of the Hellephant Supra after she didn't fare so well down at sick week. Oh no.
Dead man walking.
I wish I could say there was just one issue. We identified it, we're gonna fix it, and everything's gonna be fine. But it's really a multitude of issues that put this thing out of commission. Number one, our first warning sign that things were about to go really, really south down there in Florida is that when we changed the oil, it was gold.
I don't like that.
No, I don't either. I don't like that at all. Probably should have known things were gonna be screwed from there, but we kept it pushing. We didn't really have a choice at that point. We were already committed. We had so much time, effort, and money into that trip that we just had to see it through. And if she fails, she fails. And she did fail. Now, when we originally pulled this thing apart, we kind of chalked up all that material in the oil to piston skirt wear. Things were slapping around a little bit. There was wear on the pistons, but it turns out it's not the only issue. But the more we get into this thing, I think we've identified an even bigger culprit in the metal. Check this out.
You can hear it too.
Our crank is slapping around back and forth. We have a lot of thrust bearing wear.
That ain't good.
Not great. Now, unlike the cylinder head issue, which we'll get into later, this one was self-inflicted. We were severely over-pressurizing our transmission. We needed to have a regulator on it. We didn't know. We didn't do it. And we put so much pressure forward on this engine that it just wore this out. And that's not even the grossest display of this whole thing. I know it's going to be really tough to see, but this over here is our engine oil cooler. And if you look at the top, it's completely flat all the way across. And this one over here is our transmission cooler, and ever so slightly, it's like bowed up. I think there was so much pressure in that system that it actually ballooned the cooler itself. I also think on some level that attributed to our piston skirt wear. So I think if we would have managed to put a regulator on that Turbo 400 from the jump, we'd have probably been fine, at least down here. Again, wouldn't have solved that whole cylinder head issue, which we'll get to later after we fix this. There we go. This crank pulley's on there. It's like really on there. Usually you don't have to do all this.
Wow. Man, you're really cranking that thing,
There
huh?
we are. Oh my God. Shoo. Of all the stuff we're gonna clean up and reuse on this build, the oil pump ain't gonna be one of them. It's a brand new, was a brand new OEM Hellcat oil pump, and you just don't know when you get material like that in there, how bad it chewed it up, how much is stuck in there. Yeah, we could pull it apart and clean it out, but for 200 bucks, I think this is one worth replacing. I miss this smell. The crank feels so good. Everything feels nice and smooth. There's zero scoring. There's zero like hint that anything will be wrong.
Oh, wow. Look at that mane. Right next to thrust surface. Right in the middle of the motor. Shaky, shaky.
Why did we not pull this apart till now? It's just been sitting here for like 2 months at this point.
We pulled apart the most critical main, in theory, which is the thrust main in the dead center of the engine.
Which also happened to be the best one at this point. Basically, the further back it gets, the worse it gets. We don't know all that much about this. We're working this out as we go along. That's a freaking heavy crank. We are officially disassembled. Now, let's see if we can find any damage that's going to prevent us from using this. It feels amazing. Now, keep in mind, the crank is much, much, much harder material than those bearings. So the bearings are designed to wear and fail first. But sometimes when that happens, it also chews up the crank. And I don't know exactly how I should phrase this, so I'm just gonna go with it. This is quite a nice shaft. It's one of the better ones I've felt. Usually if you're pulling one of these out of the motor, it ain't for a good reason. There's something wrong with it.
So you're pretty happy with the shaft?
I am. I am happy with the shaft.
Awesome.
Yes. This side looks good. Better. So on our original go around, when we started tearing this thing apart just to get a look at it, we really looked into our problem cylinders, if you will. Cylinder number 7, this is the one that had 90 pounds of compression, the one that ultimately failed, later found out in the cylinder head, but we had it out nonetheless. And then there was cylinder number 2, and we yanked this one out before because of that, which is tough to see, but there's those little indentations on the piston where it lightly smooched the head. Now though, we gotta look at all of them. Cylinder number 1. The rod side rod bearing is chewed up a bit. Now what you're seeing on a lot of these rod bearings, if I can get it out one-handed there, is that you're only getting heavy wear on one side of it because of that awkward pressure that the torque converter was putting on the crank, pushing it forward. Number 3 on the rod side, pretty good. It looks like there's a mark there, but you can't feel it. 6. This one, more irregularities. You can actually see, is that almost looks like dirt on it, but those are... It's like permanent marks. That's actually wear, irregular wear.
Yeah, some trash went through there.
7, that was one of the worst last time. And then we got number 8, which you can see where this was starting to wear on the edge. It's not horrific. And same deal up top. So I think 7 and then 1. This is our worst rod, right? Other than 7 that came out last time. That is nasty. That is rod side of cylinder number 1.
Wow. That's smack and chatter.
And we got our mains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And yeah, 2 and 4, definitely the worst. Definitely the worst. One of the things you can see on these mains that we noticed right when we took number 3 off last time is that it looks like there's just weird material in there, and that's called micro welding. You can actually see the exact same thing on the engine block where those mains sat. And that is micro welding from just ultrasonic vibration. I think what we're doing here is really pushing the limits of a stock BGE block. People make more than 1,300 horsepower or 1,380 or whatever we made on these blocks. It's not a problem, but a lot of people do it with turbos. And when you're running a blower car, it's just so harsh on these engines. You gotta use power to make more power where you don't have that with a turbo. So we're probably making like, call it 1,600 horsepower theoretically. You have the forces of a car that's making that type of horsepower exerted on this engine. Regardless of the state we find this thing in now, it's obviously a really nice motor. It was set up really well. It had all the components to make a lot of power for a long time. We just pushed it really, really hard in that thing. Like, as hard as you can push a car, that's what we're doing in that. I feel like I can say with almost absolute certainty that if we'd have had turbos on this car, we'd have probably let it live at like 1,600 horsepower and probably not had any of these issues. I figured it'd be a prudent idea before we yank the cam out to go ahead and pull our lifters out as well. Not only do we get to inspect them, but they also won't fall out the bottom of the engine this way. It's crazy what you realize when you stop to think for a second, isn't it? Mm-hmm. I've definitely done that a time or two before. I say that because we're about to do it.
Bring you back memories.
It does. Usually it's on a junk engine where it doesn't much matter. Right? Check these guys out. They look good. These are Johnson lifters. They were brand new at the time of the build.
The best of the best, huh?
They really are. I know it looks like they're scoring on there, but I think that's just normal wear. You cannot feel anything. I think it's deceiving looking. We'll go ahead and give our lifters a little clean oil bath here. You saw perfectly clean oil in a minute. I have really no indication that there'd be any damage to our camshaft, but it couldn't hurt to pull it out and just inspect it anyway.
That looks good.
It does. But I mean, basically same deal as the lifters. You see marks on there, but you can't feel them. It's really in a lot better shape than it might look at like first glance. You can't feel even a hint of anything there. Shout out that Flying Ryan performance. The Max Effort SC, and that's exactly what we were. We were Max Effort SC. Our front cam bearings, okay. Again, it looks worse than it is. It feels great, a little discoloring. But if you look at every single other one, which I realize is really hard to see on camera way down there, they're minty. It's probably the best looking bearings we've had in this engine. It is honestly a shame because these pistons are in great shape. We figured if all the parts we're going to replace in here, bearings and whatnot, we might as well just go ahead and replace these two. They're only $800. I'll say only $800 for an engine of this caliber. $100 of pistons is actually really cheap. Mm-hmm. So what we were saying earlier, cheap insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, cheaper than my 2J pistons.
That is true. Yeah, how much were they?
I think like $1,500
For 6.
For 6.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
All that to make less power. More money, less power. The motto of a 2JZ. That's not gonna overflow, right? No. You do kind of feel bad about this whole deal. It feels like there's a lot of good parts here, parts that were new not that long ago that are now basically useless. I think we're gonna hang on to one of them. One of them.
Yeah.
Hang on to one of them to stick on the wall, and the rest of the pistons, along with the rings, the whack bearings, and I guess we don't need the rod bolts either. Yeah, we don't need these rod bolts, these ARP deals. We got replacements for those. All that stuff's going to merch orders. So like the next 100, there's a lot of pieces here. We're getting something from the Supra engine. We'll bag it first. Your shirt won't come oily, don't worry.
Dingleberry hone. The objective here is to knock the glazing off the cylinder walls. Pistons and rings are lubricated by oil that sits within the crosshatch of the cylinder wall. After runtime, that crosshatch diminishes slightly. Cylinder walls can't get lubricated as properly. We want to restore that.
Money. Look at it. It looks beautiful.
Thank you.
Why do machine shops even exist?
Dun, 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 dun.
Don't make that sound.
Let's go.
Don't make that sound.
All depends on you, buddy. This is the big moment.
Straight in, bone dry for measurement purposes.
This is plastic gauge. This is the poor man's machine shop.
Normally how you would do this is you'd measure your crank, you'd measure the distance between here and your block, and then you just calculate the size of the bearings. You'd be able to figure this out with math instead of crushed plastic.
We're going to use crushed plastic.
We're gonna use crushed plastic. Let's crush that frickin' plastic. Let's go. Make sure we're still where we should be. 22 to 24 thousandths.
I mean,
It's right between there, isn't
it's
it?
right between 20 and 30.
That looks an awful lot to me like somewhere around 22 to 24 thousandths.
Yeah, it's right, roughly between
Yep,
20 and 30.
Yep, we're right there.
Okay.
Plastic gauge says we are good here, so we're gonna put her back together. Oh, it feels good. Imagine that. The bearings feel better when there's oil in them. Oh, it's way tighter than before. Just by feel.
Really?
You don't have to measure, just by feel.
Oh my God.
Remember that Whipple locked up?
Yeah.
Shredded that belt? Probably clean this off before we put it back together. Sheesh. You know, like a surgeon just knows that something's wrong, just by the way things feel.
Yeah.
Cam's good. I can feel it.
Granada!
So our brand new oil pump on here, and this is an aftermarket milling unit, which is essentially a copy of the OEM Hellcat pump. It's a really big upgrade for like the 6.4 guys, the older Hemi guys, I think the 6.1s. But for this, it's basically just the same thing, a tad bit cheaper.
Top ring, middle ring, bottom rings. Out of the box, rings are designed to be filed to fit your particular engine. Every cylinder is a little bit different, and you want to make sure that you gap them appropriately. You don't ever want them to touch, or else your engine's probably going to blow up. Is install the ring. Rings have a little bit of memory. You don't want to manhandle these into place. Put one side in. Does it fit or does it not fit? All right, square it up. You want to listen to your engine builder here. They give you general guidelines as to bore and some measurement that you make else, and then some math, and we're just going to listen to what our engine builder says.
It comes on a sheet of paper, you listen to it, and you
Yes.
recreate it.
Yep, our engine builder says 22 thousandths at the top, 32 thousandths at the middle, 32 thousandths at the bottom. Out of the box, we have too tight. Yeah, that's good.
Money.
You want to knock all the edges off your ring from when you just filed it. because you want minimal friction.
Tim managed to gap all these rings perfectly, like a expertly cooked steak. It's just flawless. And now it's up to us to put all the rings on and get it installed into the block. This is about the time where like any and every mistake costs you money. Like there's nothing good that can happen here. Drop a piston, that's expensive. Scratch a skirt, like everything is bad here. It's risky, you know?
Catastrophic.
High stakes. Well, if you ever happen to find yourself in a position where you're short on cash for whatever reason, whether it's gas, groceries, or you dropped a piston when you were building your Hemi, sponsor of today's video, Clover lets you access up to $400 before payday. There's no credit check, there's no late fees, and there's definitely none of that sketchy stuff you get with like payday loan places. You can wait a couple days and get the advance for free, or if you're in like full-blown panic mode, like you pulled a piston out of the wrapper and promptly dropped it on the floor and you need to overnight another one, just pay a small fee and you can get it instantly. A lot of people, myself included when I was a little bit younger, when you need a little bit of money, where'd you go?
Credit card.
Credit card. All right, it always works out that way, and we know how that story ends, right? So remember, if you find yourself short on cash, whether it be from cars, hopefully not the blown up Hemi, groceries, just normal everyday type expenses that tend to pop up out of nowhere, especially today, check out Clover at the link in the description so they know I sent you. All right, so we got our wrist pins and rods installed. We have all of our piston rings in too. And if this is something that you like aren't doing every day, or you're, I don't know, mildly distracted while you are doing it, like say shooting an ad for your YouTube channel, it's probably a great time to just go through and double check everything. Make sure our oil ring support rail's facing down, has that little dimple there somewhere in this little gap where the wrist pin slides into. Double check that our actual wrist pin clips are seated, as the last thing you want for one of them to come out. Have a hole in your motor in a hurry. We also got to make sure our top and middle rings are facing the right way, and they were marked when we installed them, but you can also tell by a different little beveling style they have on the inside and match it up with this. Once you know they're right, flip one around so it's like 180 degrees from the other one. Slap a little oil on them. Some people say you put these in dry. I don't know. And we'll slide the whole thing down into our little tapered piston ring compressor. And you should be able to just slide it right in. There shouldn't be a lot of pressure. You definitely don't want to hammer it on it or anything like that. If you do, chances are one of your rings got flipped, caught, or something bad is happening. So just yank it all back out and do it again. Now we got a few pistons in. Go ahead and get our rods attached to the crank. Give it a good wipe with some lint-free cloth. And we'll go ahead and install our rod bearing, which yes, we definitely could have done on the rod side of things while it was out of the engine. That would have been the smart thing to do. This is our upper rod bearing. Just real important to make sure that little alignment tab there is aligned with the alignment provision in the rod. I noticed that alignment like 300 times right there. And we got to do the same thing with our rod cap. And this is where things get a little interesting. If you look at this very oily now edition of our build sheet, you can see rod bearing part number. There's two different part numbers on there. I thought that was kind of odd. I haven't seen that before on any of the engines I've had built, but it turns out when we got those old ones out, they used a slightly different rod bearing on the lower side, the cap side. And it is just different by one designation in the part number, an X. CB663HN is the top, and CB663HXN is the bottom. I did a little Googling, and as far as I can tell, the only difference is that the one that says X in it has 1/1000th of an inch of extra oil clearance. Definitely the first time I've ever seen that, but who are we to argue with professional engine builders? Now we go ahead and install our rod bolts, and while we did reuse these ARP main studs, and we're going to reuse the head studs too, these we went ahead and replaced just because they tend to take a little bit more abuse. They're cheap insurance. The whole set of these things from Cali's was like $100 versus $500 for new head studs or main studs. There's also the fact that these are bolts and not studs, so it just seems like something we should replace. I call for 80 foot-pounds of torque on these. We're gonna go 40-40 and then work our way up to 80. They don't specifically say you need to sequence them, but I figure it can't hurt, right? Turns great for now. Makes sense. There's only 4 cylinders have anything in them at the moment. Really haven't managed to screw anything up yet, so I guess we got to consider this a W. Now, this whole little assembly here, this is what you call the short block. This is usually the part we outsource to a machine shop. For me at least, this has always been the part of engine building that's just tough to do. You need so many specialty tools. I'm not talking something you can go buy for $500. Generally, you need stuff that only a machine shop has, which is why we just don't find ourselves doing it that often. Really, the only reason we could accomplish this one is because it didn't need any real machining. If this thing would actually had enough damage where you needed like the cylinder walls bored out to a 10 over, which would require different pistons, or say the crank needed polishing, or any kind of actual machining, we wouldn't have actually been able to accomplish this in here. So I guess as annoying as this whole failure was, at least we were able to refresh it in-house. And you know, I don't want to jinx ourselves, but I'm pretty confident in the result. Now, I feel like I should mention here, the last bottom end that I actually put together was an EJ25 out of a WRX STI, and it only made like 300 horsepower, maybe like 350, but to be fair, it didn't blow up. Tim, at his old place of work, rebuilt a few Audi engines when they were doing like piston rings and whatnot. So there's a little bit of experience here. And I say a little, I mean a little, and certainly not to this level. Definitely no 4-digit horsepower. At the end of the day, there's not really any difference. I mean, a bottom end's a bottom end, but I feel like when you're pushing it to this level, the potential for things to go wrong is just so much greater. If you have a clearance screwed up on a 200 horsepower daily driver, it probably lives. If you do in this, you probably mess up the track, have a hole in your block, and put the car in the wall. Since this thing's so fresh, the actual deck surface of the block is actually really, really nice. There's a little bit of discoloring from the head gasket, but you can't feel any of it. If you ever pulled off like a 100,000 mile old crusty head gasket, you know how they get. The block surface can just be disgusting. This is nice. We're just gonna give it a light scrape with the razor blade, some acetone, and we are ready to go unbox our fresh new cylinder heads. But these guys, unlike our short block, needed actual machine work. So we sent them up to a friend of Rick's in Ohio to get them squared away, and supposedly it turned out really well. I was about to go on some rant talking about everything that had been done, but I suppose this can do it a whole lot better than I could from memory. So they disassembled everything, gave it a valve job, and then we had to replace all of our intake valve, which, funny story, he had trouble figuring out which intake valves they were because they were a set of Thytec heads and they didn't have a part number on them. Turns out they're LS7 Corvette Z06 intake valves. We've also got our old intake valves back here. If you remember, when we pulled this thing apart for the first time, we sat a straight edge over the tip of the valves, and it was all over the place. I mean, you can still see it. This is sitting on that valve, barely sitting on that valve, not at all sitting on that valve, or that one, or that one, or that one, or that one. I don't know which one of these are right, and I presume neither does he at this point, but what I would guess happened is that these two made it stretched. Before, when we knew that all these tips were different heights when they were installed in the cylinder head, we really didn't know if it's because the valves themselves were so beat up that they pulled up further into the head, or maybe were forced down a little bit in the head. What this shows us is that the actual valves themselves are truly different lengths, meaning, yeah, we really did put a beating on this thing. I don't think there's a world out there where we can argue that hitting the cylinder heads with the pistons wasn't that big of a deal, but he did only have to take 3/1000ths of the surface off to make it so that we can't tell that that ever happened. And in the grand scheme of things, that's really not bad. The whole point was to take as little as possible because just like resurfacing brake rotors, these have a shelf life. If you took 100th off, you're getting to the point where you probably can't do it again, and in case we have an issue, we want to be able to take another 3/1000ths off, then maybe 4 after that, and hopefully just get as long of a life as we can out of these very expensive cylinder heads. Unless, of course, our new bottom end fails because we assembled it and a piston goes into the head and there was nothing we're going to be able to do, but at least if we have a failure like we had already, we get another shot at it. Go ahead and install our new/used ARP head studs in here. The ARP technically says you can reuse these 3 or 4 times. Some people say you shouldn't reuse them at all, and I actually used to be in that camp. until we started having to pull engines apart kind of often. Now, yeah, let's reuse them. Toss our head gasket on, and these are something apparently new by Cometic, or something that at least I had not heard of before. They're called the Cometic DST gaskets, which apparently means dual stopper technology. These are supposedly better for like big power, high horsepower applications. Are they gonna interfere with my coolant block off? I think they are. That would be wildly inconvenient. It did squeeze down there under it, but it's sitting on it right now. It's kind of flaring the gasket a little bit. I assume once we got the head on there and tighten it and whatnot, it probably wouldn't be an issue. But this really isn't a place I want to play around. So we'll put the head on, and then I guess try to put this back in. If it doesn't work, we'll just cut it down a little more and re-weld it. Now, if you watched the video where we originally built this engine, I was going on and on about how these cylinder heads are universal. Meaning there's not actually a true right-hand and left-hand cylinder head, which is awesome. But as we quickly learned when we put oil in it back then, that is very, very bad. We've got 5 drain back ports for the oil in the cylinder head, and you gotta block off the front one in each head. So technically now, I mean, yeah, we could change the plug, but we do have a passenger side and a driver side head. Hope this guy fits in here. It kind of rubs, but not really. I guess once that head gasket's compressed down, yeah, that's gonna be fine. That's fine. That's fine for sure. It is really funny, the difference that a slightly thicker head gasket can make. Because that pipe is right on it now, but it's not doing anything weird, so we're gonna call it good. Now, one of the other differences we're gonna run into here with a thicker head gasket is our push rods. Not only have we taken 3/1000ths off the surface of the cylinder heads, we're also running like roughly, because we don't know exactly what size the last one was because it was a factory gasket, roughly a 200th thicker head gasket, which means those push rod measurements we took last time, they're not going to be right anymore. Last time we found out that we needed to run a mixed match set of push rods, one from Tick Performance at a 7.025 and then another 8.3 inch push rod. It's definitely just blind wishful thinking, hoping that we're going to be able to use the same push rods, I think. But more likely than not, we are going to be in for hunting down another custom set. We got our measuring tool in there. Just need to make sure that everything's, again, we got our push rod measuring tool in there. Should spin it over until it compresses, comes back and makes sure the cam lobe isn't lobing at all. Now lock our measuring tool down so it doesn't move. Now when you're doing this, you basically have 2 options. You can either order a custom set of push rods to this exact length, or you can get the closest commercially available option, which is what we did last time. And I think this 8.3 is gonna check out still for the exhaust side. But on our intake side, we're now at a 7.06. So a 7.025 ain't gonna cut it. We're gonna have to get ourselves another one of these. We got ourselves some new 7050s from Comp. After measuring these things about 5 times and having these on and off over and over, and get them on for the last time. I don't know about you, Fernando, but it's real nice to see this engine engineering again, ain't it?
Yeah.
Even if it's by hand, it's nice to see some motion. I'll come down the home stretch here, right?
Okay.
We still haven't figured out what we're actually gonna put this in. And the answer might be something that's not at the shop right now. Like it could be a new project, but I'm curious. I'm open for suggestions on this one because it doesn't have an immediate home. I feel like generally if it's something that we put together in an engine that is, and not just a engine we pull out of some piece of trash like salvage car, there's some kind of plan for it before we put it together. So now we're just gonna have this sick new Hellephant with nowhere to go. So I don't know, let me know what you guys want to see. I am all ears on this one. Who knows? Maybe a car comes up at auction like a day from now and we find something cool. Maybe you guys have something. Maybe one of you has something they want to sell. And we can buy one of your cars and make it into something cool. So let me know. And I think that about covers it, right?
Definitely.
I'm just glad to see this thing back in one piece. Look at this, man. It's like a stupid little 2J piston. See that? It's the piston of a real man.
That's why we love Hemis, right?
Exactly.
More part, no car, buddy.
Stupid little anything.
It is little.
That
Look,
little-
you can wear this as a ring.